Hi, I'm Marcus Thompson, and 3 days ago my father told my new boss that I'm a convicted felon who can't be trusted around computers. What he didn't know was that my boss, Patricia Williams, is the federal judge who personally dismissed all charges against me and cleared my name 10 years ago when I was wrongfully accused of hacking our high school's computer system. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Growing up in Cedar Park, a quiet suburb just outside Austin, I was always the kid who understood machines better than people. While my sister Sarah was winning homecoming queen and my dad Bob was coaching Little League, I was in my bedroom taking apart old computers and teaching myself programming languages that most adults had never heard of. My parents tolerated what they called my computer obsession, the same way they might tolerate a child's imaginary friend, something they hoped I'd eventually outgrow and replace with more normal interests like sports or cars. Bob Thompson had built his life around straightforward principles. Work hard, follow the rules, don't make waves, and success will follow. As an insurance agent for State Farm, he'd spent 25 years explaining to people why their claims were denied and their premiums were increasing. But he'd done it honestly and provided for his family without ever asking for handouts or special treatment. He understood hard work. He understood following procedures, but he'd never understood why his youngest son preferred staring at screens to throwing footballs. My mother Linda tried to bridge the gap between Bob's practical worldview and my digital obsessions, but her efforts usually came out as gentle suggestions that I spend more time outdoors or join school activities that would help me make friends. She worried that my solitary hours with computers were turning me into someone who couldn't function in the real world, someone who would struggle to hold down a normal job or maintain normal relationships. When parent-teacher conferences came around, she'd listen politely as my teachers explained that I was exceptionally bright but socially awkward, academically gifted but resistant to group work. Sarah had always been the easy child, the one who brought home report cards that made sense to our parents and achievements they could brag about to neighbors. Her cheerleading trophies lined the living room mantel, her honor roll certificates covered the refrigerator, and her college acceptance letters to University of Texas had been the proudest moment in our family's history. When she married David Miller, a sensible accountant with a steady job and a reliable car, it confirmed everything Bob and Linda believed about the importance of conventional choices and traditional paths to success. The contrast between Sarah's straightforward success and my complicated interests created a family dynamic where I was perpetually the question mark, the wild card, the child who might turn out fine but probably needed extra watching. Family dinners often included subtle suggestions about backup plans, practical skills, and the importance of having something to fall back on when the computer thing didn't work out. Nobody ever said they expected me to fail, but nobody seemed particularly confident that I would succeed either. High school had been a minefield of social awkwardness and academic frustration. While I could write complex code and solve programming problems that stumped my computer science teacher, I struggled with the kind of collaborative projects and public presentations that seemed to come naturally to everyone else. I ate lunch alone most days, spent free periods in the computer lab, and generally tried to make myself invisible to the classmates who saw my technical skills as either threatening or irrelevant. Senior year should have been the culmination of 12 years of education, the launching pad for whatever came next. I'd been accepted to UT Austin's computer science program, with a partial scholarship based on a portfolio of programming projects that had impressed the admissions committee. My grades were solid, my test scores were high, and for the first time in my academic career, I felt like I was heading somewhere that would value the skills I'd been developing in isolation for years. That's when everything fell apart in the most spectacular and unfair way possible. The Riverside High School computer network had been experiencing problems for weeks. Students couldn't access their email accounts, grades were disappearing from the online portal, and several teachers reported that their lesson plans and test files had been corrupted or deleted entirely. The IT department, which consisted of one overworked technician and a computer science teacher who doubled as tech support, couldn't identify the source of the problems and couldn't prevent them from getting worse. As the only student in the school with advanced programming knowledge, I'd actually been trying to help. I'd noticed patterns in the network disruptions that suggested someone was deliberately targeting the school's servers, and I'd been documenting the attacks and trying to trace their origin. When Mr. Peterson, the computer science teacher, mentioned that the district was considering bringing in expensive outside consultants to fix the problems, I'd offered to take a look and see if I could identify what was happening. That offer turned into the biggest mistake of my teenage life. On a Friday afternoon in March, I was in the computer lab running diagnostic programs and analyzing network traffic logs when the school's internet connection suddenly... Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Crashed completely. Every computer in the building lost network access simultaneously, and the main server that housed student records and administrative data went offline. While I was still trying to figure out what had happened, Mr. Peterson arrived with the principal, the district IT coordinator, and a police officer. They'd found my user account logged into multiple systems, my diagnostic programs running on the main server, and my fingerprints on keyboards and computers throughout the lab. From their perspective, the evidence was overwhelming and damning. The school's worst computer problems had occurred while I was alone in the lab, running programs they didn't understand, accessing systems I wasn't supposed to touch. The fact that I'd been trying to help didn't matter when the evidence suggested I'd been the one causing the problems all along. The arrest happened so quickly that I barely understood what was occurring. One moment I was explaining to the principal that I'd been trying to trace the real hacker, and the next moment I was being read my rights and led out of the school in handcuffs while my classmates stared through classroom windows. The charges included unauthorized access to computer systems, destruction of digital property, and interference with educational activities. The prosecutor was talking about potential federal charges since the school received federal funding and the attacks had crossed state lines through internet connections. Bob's reaction to my arrest was everything I'd feared, and worse. The phone call from the police station had reached him at work, and by the time he arrived to post bail, his face was a mixture of disappointment, anger, and complete bewilderment. During the silent drive home, I could feel his worldview crumbling around the edges. His son, the one he'd never quite understood, had apparently been exactly the kind of troublemaker he'd always worried about. All those hours alone with computers hadn't been harmless obsession, they'd been preparation for criminal activity. Linda's response was different, but equally devastating. She cried quietly for most of that first evening, not from anger but from confusion and fear about what this meant for my future. College acceptance letters that had arrived just weeks earlier suddenly seemed meaningless. Scholarship opportunities that had represented escape and validation were now at risk of disappearing completely. The future we'd all been planning, tentatively and with reservation, had been replaced by court dates and lawyer consultations and conversations about plea bargains. Sarah's reaction was perhaps the most painful, because it felt like the final confirmation that I'd always been the family problem waiting to explode. She didn't say much during those first few days, but her careful distance and worried expressions made it clear that she saw my arrest as the inevitable result of choices she'd never understood. When her friends asked about what was happening, she deflected with vague comments about family stress and legal complications, clearly embarrassed by having a brother who'd been arrested for computer crimes. The local newspaper covered the story with the kind of sensational headlines that made everything sound worse than it was. Local teen arrested for school hacking, computer crimes disrupt high school operations, and student faces federal charges in cyber attack, created a narrative that spread through our community faster than actual facts. Neighbors who'd known me since childhood suddenly looked at me differently, as if my quiet personality and computer interests had been warning signs they should have recognized earlier. The legal process that followed was a nightmare of complexity that none of us had been prepared for. Our family lawyer, a general practitioner who usually handled divorces and property disputes, was clearly out of his depth when it came to computer crime allegations. He kept using terms like plea bargain and reduced charges in ways that suggested he believed I was probably guilty but might be able to minimize the consequences through negotiation. Bob wanted me to take whatever deal was offered and put the whole situation behind us as quickly as possible. His insurance industry background had taught him that fighting large institutions was expensive and usually futile, that accepting responsibility and moving forward was generally the smartest approach to legal problems. He couldn't understand why I insisted on maintaining my innocence when the evidence seemed so clear and the prosecutor seemed so confident. The months between arrest and trial were the longest of my life. I was suspended from school pending resolution of the charges, which meant finishing my senior year through independent study programs that kept me isolated from classmates and teachers who might have supported my version of events. College admissions officers were notified of the pending charges, and my acceptance to UT Austin was placed on hold pending final disposition of the case. Every day felt like waiting for a verdict that would determine whether I had any future at all. The technical evidence against me was circumstantial but overwhelming to people who didn't understand computer systems. My presence in the lab, my access to school networks, and my advanced programming knowledge created a narrative that was simple and convincing, even if it was completely wrong. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, and in a way that validated everything I'd been trying to explain about the real nature of the attacks. Kevin Chen, a junior who'd been quietly following the investigation, had been running his own analysis of the network problems using skills he'd learned from online programming courses. Unlike the adults who'd assumed I was guilty, Kevin had actually examined the evidence and found patterns that didn't match my user activity. The real attacker had been using a sophisticated technique called IP spoofing to make his intrusions appear to originate from my account, while actually controlling the school's network from an external location. Kevin's analysis showed that the actual source of the attacks was a former student who'd graduated 2 years earlier and had been systematically targeting the school's computer systems as revenge for academic disputes with several teachers. When Kevin brought this evidence to the FBI's computer crime unit, it triggered a federal investigation that quickly identified the real perpetrator and demonstrated that I'd been not just innocent, but actively trying to solve the same crimes I'd been accused of committing. The sophisticated nature of the real attacks, involving techniques and resources far beyond what a high school student would typically possess, made it clear that the original investigation had been fundamentally flawed. The federal judge assigned to oversee the case was Patricia Williams, a former prosecutor who'd built her career on complex white-collar crime cases before being appointed to the federal bench. Judge Williams had seen enough computer crime cases to recognize both the technical sophistication of the real attacks and the fundamental impossibility of my having been responsible for them. Her review of the evidence was thorough, methodical, and completely devastating to the prosecution's case. The hearing, where all charges were dismissed, was surreal in its anticlimactic brevity. After months of legal proceedings and family stress, Judge Williams reviewed the FBI's findings, examined Kevin's analysis, and declared that not only were all charges dismissed, but that I deserved recognition for having attempted to assist law enforcement in identifying the real perpetrator. She specifically noted that my technical skills and ethical approach to the investigation had been exemplary, and that the original charges had been based on fundamental misunderstandings of both the evidence and the nature of computer security. The vindication should have felt triumphant, but instead it felt hollow and incomplete. My name was cleared, my college acceptance was reinstated, and the real criminal was facing federal charges of his own. But the months of family tension, community suspicion, and personal doubt had created wounds that couldn't be healed simply by judicial decree. Bob's relief at the outcome was genuine, but it came with an undertone of continued bewilderment about how everything had gotten so complicated. Linda's tears of joy were mixed with exhaustion from months of stress and worry about outcomes she'd never been equipped to understand. The local newspaper ran a small correction buried on page 6, noting that charges had been dismissed and the real perpetrator had been identified. But corrections never generate the same attention as accusations, and many people in our community retained vague impressions that I'd been involved in some kind of computer trouble at school. The stigma of arrest and prosecution lingered in ways that official vindication couldn't completely erase. College at UT Austin became an escape from the lingering awkwardness of home, an opportunity to start fresh in an environment where my technical skills were valued rather than viewed with suspicion. Computer science courses that had seemed like distant goals during the legal proceedings became immediate realities that validated everything I'd been working toward during those isolated years of self-directed learning. For the first time in my academic career, I was surrounded by professors and classmates who understood that programming wasn't just a hobby or a fallback plan, but a legitimate field of study with real professional potential. The 4 years of college passed in a blur of challenging coursework, internship opportunities, and gradually building confidence in my ability to succeed in a field that actually valued the skills I'd been developing since childhood. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in computer science and multiple job offers from technology companies that were impressed by both my technical abilities and my experience with computer security issues. The wrongful arrest that had seemed like the end of everything had actually provided me with insights into cybersecurity and digital forensics that made me a more attractive candidate to employers. My first job out of college was with a small software development firm in Austin that specialized in creating database management systems for legal professionals. The work was challenging and rewarding, involving complex programming problems that required exactly the kind of analytical thinking and attention to detail that I'd always excelled at. Within 2 years, I'd been promoted to senior developer and was leading projects that integrated artificial intelligence with legal research platforms. But it was the opportunity to join TechFlow Solutions that really represented everything I'd been working toward since high school. TechFlow was a mid-sized company that developed software specifically for courts and legal professionals, creating digital platforms that streamlined case management, evidence handling, and judicial administration. The company's reputation for innovation and its focus on improving the efficiency of legal systems made it exactly the kind of workplace where my technical skills could contribute to meaningful social impact. The interview process at TechFlow had been rigorous and comprehensive, involving technical assessments, project presentations, and multiple rounds of meetings with different department heads. When CEO James Foster called to offer me the position of lead developer for their new judicial analytics platform, it felt like validation of everything I'd overcome and achieved since that terrible senior year of high school. What made the opportunity even more significant was learning that TechFlow's chief technology officer was Patricia Williams, the former federal judge who dismissed all charges against me 10 years earlier. Judge Williams had left the bench after 15 years to pursue opportunities in legal technology, bringing her deep understanding of court systems and judicial processes to the challenge of developing software that could improve access to justice and administrative efficiency. Working under Judge Williams, now simply Patricia to her colleagues, was both intimidating and inspiring in ways I hadn't anticipated. Her transition from the federal bench to corporate leadership had been seamless, bringing the same analytical rigor and ethical standards that had defined her judicial career to the challenge of managing technical teams and product development. She approached software design with the same methodical attention to detail that she'd once applied to legal evidence, ensuring that every feature and function served the broader goal of improving legal system effectiveness. The first few months at TechFlow exceeded every expectation I'd had about professional satisfaction and workplace culture. The development team was collaborative and innovative, the projects were technically challenging and socially meaningful, and the leadership was both demanding and supportive in ways that brought out the best in everyone. Patricia's management style combined high expectations with genuine investment in employee development, creating an environment where technical excellence was rewarded and professional growth was actively encouraged. My relationship with my family had gradually improved during the years since college graduation, but it remained complicated by lingering effects of the arrest and trial. Bob and Linda were proud of my professional success in the abstract, but they still didn't really understand what I did for work or why it mattered. Family gatherings often included well-meaning but awkward questions about whether I was happy with my career choice, and whether I ever considered pursuing something more traditional or stable. Sarah's relationship with me had evolved into something more respectful, but still distant, characterized by polite interest in my achievements but limited understanding of their significance. Her marriage to David and their subsequent focus on starting their own family had created natural distance that was probably healthy for both of us, allowing our relationship to exist without the constant comparison and competition that had defined our childhood interactions. The arrest and trial had become something our family rarely discussed directly, but it remained an underlying current in many conversations about my choices and future plans. Bob occasionally made comments about the importance of staying out of trouble or avoiding situations that might be misunderstood, as if my vindication had been a narrow escape rather than complete exoneration. Linda worried about whether my work with computer security might somehow put me at risk of future legal complications, not understanding that my expertise in cybersecurity was actually what made me valuable to employers. 10 years after Judge Williams had dismissed all charges against me, I was finally living the life that arrest had threatened to derail. I had a career that challenged and fulfilled me, colleagues who respected my abilities, and leadership that recognized my potential for continued growth within the company. The wrongful prosecution that had seemed like the end of everything had actually provided me with insights and experiences that made me better at my job and more committed to using technology in service of justice. That's what made my father's phone call to Patricia Williams so devastating and ironic in ways that Bob couldn't possibly have understood when he decided to intervene in my professional life. The morning that changed everything started like any other Tuesday at TechFlow Solutions. I arrived at the office at 7:30, an hour before most of my colleagues, because I'd always been more productive in the quiet period before phones started ringing and meetings began filling conference rooms. The Austin skyline was just catching the early sunlight through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our downtown office space, and I had my usual large coffee and a complex database optimization problem that had been nagging at me since the previous afternoon. TechFlow occupied 3 floors of a modern glass building in Austin's central business district, with the development team stationed on the 15th floor where we had unobstructed views of the state capitol and the University of Texas campus. The office itself was designed to encourage collaboration, while providing enough private space for the kind of deep concentration that serious programming required. My workstation was positioned near the northeast corner, where I could see both the morning sun and the traffic patterns that indicated how the rest of the city was starting its day. Patricia Williams had a corner office on the same floor, positioned so she could observe the development team's workflow, while maintaining the privacy necessary for executive meetings and strategic planning sessions. Her office walls were lined with awards from her judicial career, photographs with legal luminaries, and technical certifications that demonstrated her commitment to understanding the software development process at a granular level. Unlike many executives who relied entirely on subordinates to explain technical concepts, Patricia had invested hundreds of hours learning programming languages and database architecture, so she could participate meaningfully in product development discussions. The judicial analytics platform we were developing represented the most ambitious project in TechFlow's history, involving artificial intelligence algorithms that could analyze case patterns, predict outcome probabilities, and identify potential inefficiencies in court scheduling and resource allocation. The technical challenges were enormous, requiring integration of multiple data sources, real-time processing of complex legal documents, and user interfaces that could serve everyone from Supreme Court justices to small-town municipal judges. My role as lead developer meant I was responsible for architecting the core database systems that would house decades of legal precedents, case files, and judicial decisions from courts across the country. The work required not just programming expertise, but deep understanding of legal processes, privacy regulations, and the kind of security protocols necessary for handling sensitive judicial information. Every line of code I wrote had to meet federal standards for data protection, while remaining accessible enough for judges and attorneys who might not be technically sophisticated. The project had attracted attention from the highest levels of the legal system, including federal appellate courts that were considering adopting our platform for case management and analytics. The Department of Justice had expressed interest in licensing our software for federal prosecutors, and several state Supreme Courts were evaluating whether our tools could help them reduce case backlogs and improve judicial efficiency. Success with the platform wouldn't just advance TechFlow's business prospects, it could genuinely improve access to justice for millions of Americans. Working under Patricia's leadership had been the most professionally rewarding experience of my career. Her background as a federal judge provided insights into user needs and regulatory requirements that no amount of technical expertise could substitute for, while her commitment to ethical technology development ensured that every feature we built served the broader goals of fairness and transparency in legal proceedings. She pushed our team to consider not just what was technically possible, but what was morally responsible and socially beneficial. The irony of my situation wasn't lost on me. 10 years after Patricia Williams had cleared my name and dismissed charges that could have destroyed my future, I was working directly under her leadership on projects that combined my technical skills with my hard-earned understanding of how computer evidence could be misunderstood and misused. The wrongful prosecution that had seemed like the worst thing that could happen to me had actually provided me with unique qualifications for developing legal technology that protected both system integrity and individual rights. My colleagues at TechFlow knew about my background in general terms, since my experience with cybersecurity and digital forensics was part of what made me valuable to the company. but they didn't know the specific details of the arrest and dismissal, and they certainly didn't know that our CTO was the judge who had personally vindicated me. Patricia and I had never discussed our previous encounter directly, maintaining the kind of professional relationship that focused on current projects rather than past legal proceedings. That professional distance was probably necessary for both of us, allowing me to succeed on my own merits without feeling like I owed my position to her previous intervention, and allowing her to evaluate my work objectively without being influenced by her knowledge of my personal history. Our working relationship was built on mutual respect for each other's expertise and shared commitment to developing technology that could improve legal system effectiveness. The morning routine that had become second nature over my 8 months at TechFlow involved reviewing overnight system logs, checking for any issues with our development servers, and prioritizing the day's programming tasks based on project deadlines and team dependencies. The judicial analytics platform was approaching its first major milestone, a demonstration for federal court administrators that could determine whether we received funding for the next phase of development. Kevin Chen, my closest friend and colleague, arrived at 8:15 with his usual enthusiasm for whatever complex problem we'd be tackling that day. Kevin had been the one who'd discovered the evidence that cleared me in high school, though he'd transferred to a different university and we'd lost touch during college. Finding him on the TechFlow development team when I started working there had been an unexpected bonus, like discovering that someone who'd already proven their loyalty was waiting to resume a friendship that had been interrupted by geography and time. Kevin's technical skills complemented mine in ways that made us an effective partnership on challenging projects. While I focused on database architecture and back-end systems, he specialized in user interface design and the kind of intuitive workflow development that made complex software accessible to non-technical users. Our collaboration on the judicial analytics platform had produced some of the most elegant and functional legal software either of us had ever worked on. Michelle Rodriguez, TechFlow's Human Resources Director, was the kind of professional who managed to be simultaneously supportive and efficient, creating workplace policies that protected both employee rights and company interests, while maintaining the kind of collaborative culture that attracted top talent. Her background included employment law and organizational psychology, giving her insights into team dynamics and conflict resolution that kept our development group functioning smoothly, even during high-pressure project deadlines. James Foster, the company's CEO, had founded TechFlow 7 years earlier with the vision of creating technology that could democratize access to legal resources and improve efficiency in court systems that were often overwhelmed by caseloads and constrained by outdated administrative processes. His leadership style combined entrepreneurial energy with genuine commitment to social impact, ensuring that business success never came at the expense of the ethical principles that guided our product development. The company culture at TechFlow was unlike anything I'd experienced in previous jobs, combining the innovative energy of a startup with the stability and professionalism of an established business. Team meetings were collaborative rather than hierarchical, with everyone encouraged to contribute ideas regardless of their position or seniority. Professional development was actively supported through conference attendance, certification programs, and educational opportunities that helped employees stay current with rapidly evolving technology. My personal life had stabilized in ways that would have seemed impossible during the chaos of high school and the uncertainty of college. I lived in a modern apartment in the Domain, Austin's upscale shopping and entertainment district, close enough to work that I could walk or bike on nice days, but far enough from family in Cedar Park that I could maintain the kind of independence that had always been important to me. The neighborhood was full of young professionals working in technology, law, and finance, creating a social environment where my career choices were understood and respected, rather than viewed with suspicion or confusion. Dating had become easier, as I'd gained confidence in my professional identity, and learned to communicate about my work in ways that didn't require extensive technical explanation. My current relationship with Amanda Chen, Kevin's cousin who worked as a paralegal at a downtown law firm, was the most stable and satisfying romantic connection I'd ever experienced. Amanda understood both the technical and legal aspects of my work, creating conversations that felt intellectually engaging rather than forced or superficial. The arrest and trial from high school had receded into background history that informed my perspective on justice and technology, but didn't dominate my daily thoughts or professional decisions. I'd learned to discuss that experience when relevant without feeling defensive or ashamed, understanding that my vindication and subsequent success provided valuable insights rather than shameful secrets. The wrongful prosecution had actually made me better at my job by giving me first-hand understanding of how digital evidence could be misinterpreted and how important it was to build legal technology that protected against both technical errors and procedural injustices. Family relationships had evolved into something more comfortable than they'd been during my teenage years, though they remained characterized by fundamental differences in values and aspirations. Bob and Linda were proud of my professional success in abstract terms, but they still didn't really understand what I did for work or why it mattered beyond providing financial stability. Their version of success remained rooted in traditional markers like homeownership, marriage, and community involvement, creating conversations that often felt like translations between different cultural languages. Sarah and David had started their own family the previous year, creating new dynamics that shifted family gatherings toward their parenting experiences and away from my career developments. Their focus on raising children in Cedar Park, near Bob and Linda, represented the kind of conventional life choices that my parents understood and celebrated, making my continued singleness and urban lifestyle seem like temporary phases rather than deliberate preferences. The monthly family dinners at Moonshine Patio Bar and Grill had become opportunities for polite conversation about safe topics like weather, sports, and neighborhood developments, with careful avoidance of anything that might highlight the fundamental differences in how we understood success, fulfillment, and professional purpose. Bob's insurance industry background made him skeptical of technology companies in general, viewing them as unstable and potentially fraudulent compared to traditional businesses with physical products and established customer bases. Linda's concerns focused more on social aspects of my lifestyle, worrying that my focus on career development was preventing me from forming the kind of lasting personal relationships that she believed were necessary for long-term happiness. Her questions about my dating life and social activities came from genuine care, but they often felt like gentle pressure to conform to timelines and priorities that didn't match my actual goals or interests. The distance between my family's expectations and my actual life had become manageable through a combination of limited contact and careful boundary setting. I attended required family events, shared general updates about work and personal developments, and avoided conversations that might reveal how fundamentally different our worldviews had become. This approach preserved family relationships while protecting my autonomy and preventing the kind of conflicts that had characterized my teenage years. My success at TechFlow had created a professional identity that felt authentic and sustainable in ways that previous jobs hadn't achieved. The combination of challenging technical problems, meaningful social impact, and supportive leadership made every day feel like progress toward goals that mattered both personally and professionally. The judicial analytics platform represented exactly the kind of project I'd dreamed about during college, using advanced technology to solve real-world problems that affected millions of people. The recognition I'd received for my contributions to the platform had come from industry publications, professional conferences, and academic institutions that understood the technical complexity and social significance of what we were building. My presentations at legal technology conferences had established me as a thought leader in the intersection of artificial intelligence and judicial administration, creating opportunities for consulting work and speaking engagements that enhanced both my professional reputation and TechFlow's market position. The financial success that accompanied professional recognition had enabled lifestyle choices that would have seemed impossible during my struggling college years or uncertain early career period. The apartment in the domain, the reliable car, the ability to travel and pursue hobbies without constantly worrying about money represented security that validated every difficult decision I'd made about prioritizing education and skill development over immediate comfort or social acceptance. My relationship with Amanda had developed into something that felt like genuine partnership, rather than casual dating or desperate attachment. Her understanding of legal processes complemented my technical expertise, creating conversations that challenged both of us to think more deeply about our respective fields. Her support for my career goals came without pressure to change or compromise, while her own professional ambitions created mutual respect rather than competition or resentment. The social circle that had formed around work colleagues, Amanda's legal profession contacts, and Austin's technology community provided the kind of intellectual stimulation and professional networking that had been missing from my Cedar Park family environment. These relationships were based on shared interests and mutual respect rather than obligation or proximity, creating genuine friendships that enhanced both personal fulfillment and career development. Looking back on the 10 years since Judge Williams had dismissed all charges against me, I could see how every challenge and setback had contributed to building the life I was now living. The wrongful arrest had taught me about resilience and the importance of maintaining integrity under pressure. The family conflicts had shown me the necessity of defining success according to my own values rather than others' expectations. The academic challenges had developed analytical skills that made me effective at solving complex technical problems. The professional trajectory that had led from college graduation to TechFlow represented validation of every choice I'd made about prioritizing long-term goals over short-term comfort. The decision to major in computer science, despite my family's lack of understanding, had proven correct. The choice to specialize in cybersecurity and legal technology, despite limited immediate job prospects, had created unique qualifications that made me valuable to employers working on socially meaningful projects. The morning of Tuesday, October 15th, started like hundreds of previous mornings at TechFlow, with coffee and code and the quiet satisfaction of building something that mattered. I had no idea that my father was about to make a phone call that would transform professional success into personal crisis, turning my carefully constructed independence into a public referendum on my character and trustworthiness. Bob Thompson had been thinking about that phone call for weeks, wrestling with concerns that had been building since I'd started working at TechFlow. His understanding of my job was limited to general knowledge that I worked with computers for a company that did something related to legal systems, but his understanding of my personal history included vivid memories of arrest and trial that continued to worry him, despite the eventual vindication. The decision to contact my boss directly came from Bob's growing anxiety that I hadn't been completely honest about my criminal background during the hiring process. His insurance industry experience had taught him that undisclosed legal problems could create liability issues for employers, potentially exposing companies to lawsuits or regulatory sanctions if they unknowingly employed people with criminal records. His concern wasn't malicious, but it was based on fundamental misunderstandings about both the nature of my legal situation and the thoroughness of TechFlow's background check procedures. Bob had been reading news articles about corporate executives who'd been fired after hidden criminal histories were discovered, creating his impression that my continued employment might be based on incomplete disclosure rather than legitimate qualifications. His worry that I might be deceiving my employer combined with his lingering discomfort about the arrest and trial to create a sense of obligation to protect both me and my company from potential future problems. The phone call itself was brief and polite, with Bob introducing himself as my father and requesting a private conversation with Patricia Williams about concerns related to my employment. His explanation was careful and diplomatic, expressing worry that I might not have been completely forthcoming about my legal history, and suggesting that the company might want to conduct additional background investigation to protect against potential liability issues. Patricia's response was professional and measured, thanking Bob for his concern while explaining that TechFlow's hiring procedures included comprehensive background checks that met all industry standards for positions involving sensitive data and security clearances. She assured him that the company was fully aware of my qualifications and background, but she didn't specify that she personally had been involved in my legal case, or that my so-called criminal history was actually a matter of complete vindication. The conversation lasted less than 10 minutes, but its implications would reverberate through every aspect of my professional and personal life in ways that none of us could have anticipated. Bob hung up feeling like he'd fulfilled his parental obligation to protect both his son and his son's employer from potential problems. Patricia hung up with a mixture of amusement and concern about family dynamics that seemed more complicated than she'd realized. I was completely unaware that the conversation had taken place, focused on debugging a complex algorithm that was critical to the judicial analytics platform's performance optimization. The morning proceeded normally through code reviews, team meetings, and technical problem solving that engaged all of my attention and energy. I had no idea that my professional reputation was about to become entangled with family anxieties and misunderstandings that I thought I'd left behind years earlier. The first indication that something unusual was happening came during my regular 11 o'clock check-in meeting with Patricia, when she mentioned receiving a call from my father that morning. The casual way she brought up the conversation suggested that she didn't consider it particularly significant, but her curiosity about my family's understanding of my work and background indicated that something in Bob's call had raised questions that deserved clarification. My immediate reaction was confusion rather than alarm, since Bob had never shown enough interest in my work to contact my employer directly. Patricia's description of the conversation as concerning my background and employment qualifications created anxiety that intensified as I realized what Bob might have said, and how it might have been interpreted by someone who didn't know the full details of my legal history. The irony of the situation was almost overwhelming. My father had called my boss to warn her about my criminal background, not knowing that my boss was the federal judge who had personally cleared me of all charges. Bob's well-intentioned attempt to protect both me and my employer from legal complications had created exactly the kind of professional crisis he'd been trying to prevent, while simultaneously revealing family dynamics that I'd been trying to keep separate from my work environment. Patricia's handling of the situation demonstrated the leadership skills and judicial temperament that had made her successful in both legal and corporate environments. Rather than treating Bob's call as a crisis requiring immediate action, she viewed it as an opportunity to clarify misunderstandings and ensure that everyone involved had accurate information about my qualifications and background. Her suggestion that we schedule a more comprehensive conversation about my family situation and its potential impact on my work relationships was both reasonable and concerning, creating the possibility that personal issues I'd thought were resolved might become ongoing professional complications. The boundary between my carefully managed family relationships and my professional success was about to disappear in ways that would test everything I'd built over the past 10 years. The remainder of that Tuesday was spent in a state of anxious anticipation about what Patricia might have concluded from Bob's call and how it might affect my standing within the company. The Judicial Analytics Platform demonstration was scheduled for the following week, representing months of work that could determine TechFlow's future direction and my own career prospects within the organization. The thought that my father's misguided intervention might undermine everything I'd achieved was both infuriating and terrifying, creating the kind of professional vulnerability that I'd spent years trying to avoid, through careful boundary management and strategic discretion about my personal history. The arrest and trial that had seemed like ancient history was about to become immediate reality, in ways that would transform my understanding of family loyalty, professional relationships, and the long-term consequences of choices made with good intentions but incomplete information. The aftermath of Bob's phone call rippled through my life like a stone thrown into still water, creating expanding circles of consequence that reached far beyond the initial conversation. Within hours of Patricia mentioning the call, word had somehow spread through TechFlow's administrative channels that there were questions about my background that required executive attention. Michelle Rodriguez from Human Resources requested a meeting for Thursday morning, and James Foster's assistant called to schedule time on Friday afternoon for what she described as a routine personnel discussion. The professional anxiety that followed was unlike anything I'd experienced since the original arrest 10 years earlier. During college and my early career, I'd grown accustomed to being evaluated purely on merit, with my technical skills and project contributions serving as the primary measures of my value to employers. The idea that family dynamics and misunderstood legal history could suddenly become factors in my professional standing felt like regression to a period I'd thought was permanently behind me. Kevin noticed the change in my demeanor immediately, commenting on my unusual distraction during our Wednesday morning code review session. When I explained what had happened, his reaction was a mixture of disbelief and frustrated recognition of patterns we'd both hoped were finished. Kevin remembered the original investigation and trial in vivid detail, since his forensic analysis had been crucial to identifying the real perpetrator and clearing my name. His understanding of both the technical evidence and the family dynamics made him the only person who could fully appreciate the irony of Bob's intervention. The conversation with Kevin helped clarify the absurdity of the situation, while also highlighting its potential seriousness. From a technical perspective, Patricia Williams knew more about my case than anyone else in the legal system, having personally reviewed every piece of evidence and every aspect of the investigation. From a professional perspective, TechFlow's background check had been more thorough than most companies required, including federal security clearance protocols that examined every aspect of my personal and legal history. But from a family dynamics perspective, Bob's call represented a fundamental misunderstanding of both my professional qualifications and his own role in my adult life. His decision to contact my employer directly, without consulting me or understanding the implications, revealed how little he grasped about my career or the nature of my relationship with my colleagues. The protective instinct that had motivated his call was genuine, but it was based on outdated assumptions about my vulnerability and his responsibility to intervene in my professional affairs. The most frustrating aspect of the situation was the complete impossibility of explaining it to Bob without revealing details about Patricia's judicial background that could create even more complications. I couldn't tell him that my boss was the judge who had dismissed all charges against me without potentially compromising Patricia's privacy and creating new awkwardness in our working relationship. The very information that would resolve Bob's concerns was information that I couldn't share without creating different problems. Amanda's reaction when I explained the situation over dinner Wednesday evening was immediate understanding of both the professional risks and the family dynamics involved. Her experience as a paralegal had given her insights into how legal history could be weaponized in employment situations, even when that history involved complete vindication rather than actual wrongdoing. Her support was both emotional and strategic, helping me think through potential responses while providing the kind of perspective that comes from understanding both legal processes and workplace politics. The conversation with Amanda also highlighted how much my life had changed since high school, when family crises felt like existential threats rather than manageable complications. The professional reputation I'd built, the relationships I'd developed, and the financial security I'd achieved created resilience that hadn't existed during my teenage years. Even if Bob's intervention created temporary workplace difficulties, I had options and resources that would allow me to navigate whatever consequences emerged. The meeting with Michelle Rodriguez on Thursday morning was conducted with the kind of professional discretion that characterized TechFlow's approach to sensitive personnel matters. Michelle's office was designed to encourage honest conversation while maintaining appropriate boundaries, with comfortable seating arrangements that felt more like consulting sessions than disciplinary proceedings. Her opening questions focused on my understanding of company policies regarding background disclosure and my comfort level with recent administrative inquiries. Michelle's explanation of the situation was carefully neutral, describing Bob's call as raising questions about communication protocols, rather than suggesting any impropriety on my part. Her review of my hiring documents confirmed that all background information had been properly disclosed and verified, with federal security clearance investigations that exceeded industry standards for positions involving sensitive data. The meeting was more about ensuring that I felt supported during what she recognized as an awkward family situation than about investigating potential employment issues. The relief I felt after meeting with Michelle was significant, but incomplete, since Patricia's perspective remained the most important factor in determining how the situation would ultimately be resolved. Her position as both my supervisor and the person with the most comprehensive knowledge of my legal history made her reaction the determining factor in whether Bob's call would become a temporary annoyance or a lasting professional complication. The judicial analytics platform demonstration scheduled for the following week added urgency to resolving any lingering questions about my status within the company. The project represented months of collaborative work that could determine TechFlow's future market position and my own career trajectory within the organization. The possibility that family drama might interfere with professional recognition felt particularly unfair, given how much effort I'd invested in keeping those aspects of my life separate. Kevin's suggestion that we accelerate our preparation for the demonstration made practical sense, while also providing productive distraction from anxiety about administrative meetings and family complications. The technical aspects of the platform were solid and impressive, representing genuinely innovative approaches to legal data analysis that could revolutionize how courts managed caseloads and administrative functions. Focusing on the substance of our work rather than the peripheral drama helped maintain perspective about what actually mattered for long-term career success. The irony of preparing legal technology demonstrations while dealing with family misunderstandings about my own legal history wasn't lost on me, but it also highlighted how much expertise I'd developed in the intersection of technology and legal processes. The wrongful arrest and trial that Bob's still worried about had actually provided me with insights that made me more effective at developing software for legal professionals. My understanding of how digital evidence could be misinterpreted had directly informed security protocols and user interface design that protected against both technical errors and procedural mistakes. Thursday evening brought an unexpected phone call from Sarah, who had apparently learned about Bob's contact with my employer through family conversations that I hadn't been included in. Sarah's perspective on the situation was more sophisticated than I'd expected, recognizing both Bob's good intentions and the potential professional damage his intervention might cause. Her offer to help mediate family discussions about boundaries and communication was appreciated, even though I wasn't sure how productive such conversations would ultimately prove. Sarah's understanding of workplace dynamics had evolved significantly since her own career development in marketing, giving her insights into how family interference could undermine professional relationships, even when motivated by genuine concern. Her suggestion that we arrange a family meeting to discuss communication protocols and mutual expectations was reasonable, though I remained skeptical about Bob's willingness to acknowledge that his intervention had been inappropriate. The conversation with Sarah also revealed that Linda had been more aware of the potential problems with Bob's call than I'd realized, but had been unable to dissuade him from what he viewed as necessary parental intervention. Linda's perspective on my career had evolved over the years from bewilderment to cautious pride, but she still struggled with understanding why my professional relationships required different boundaries than those she was accustomed to in her elementary school teaching environment. Friday morning brought the news that the Judicial Analytics Platform demonstration had been moved up to Monday afternoon, creating additional pressure to finalize technical preparations while managing ongoing administrative discussions about my employment status. The accelerated timeline was actually beneficial for my anxiety levels, providing immediate goals that required complete attention, rather than allowing continued worry about hypothetical consequences. The meeting with James Foster Friday afternoon was conducted in his office overlooking downtown Austin, with floor-to-ceiling windows that provided views of the state capitol and the university campus, where I developed many of the skills that had led to my current position. James's leadership style combined entrepreneurial energy with genuine concern for employee welfare, creating conversations that felt more like strategic planning sessions than formal evaluations. James's opening comments focused on the upcoming demonstration and my contributions to the Judicial Analytics Platform, emphasizing the technical innovation and market potential that the project represented. His acknowledgement of my role in developing core algorithms and database architecture felt like validation of my professional value that transcended any temporary complications created by family interference. The discussion of Bob's phone call was brief and matter-of-fact, with James treating it as an example of family members who didn't understand modern employment practices rather than a reflection on my character or qualifications. His experience managing technology companies had apparently included similar situations, where well-meaning relatives created workplace complications through misguided attempts to help or protect their family members. James's perspective on the situation was both reassuring and educational, helping me understand how common it was for successful professionals to deal with family members who didn't grasp the implications of their interventions. His advice about establishing clear boundaries and communication protocols was practical and actionable, providing strategies for preventing future incidents while maintaining family relationships. The most significant aspect of the conversation was James's confirmation that Patricia had provided him with complete context for understanding Bob's call and its implications. While he didn't specify what information Patricia had shared, his confident dismissal of any employment concerns suggested that she had been able to explain the situation in ways that eliminated, rather than exacerbated, potential problems. The weekend that followed was spent in intensive preparation for Monday's demonstration, with Kevin and I working through every aspect of the platform's functionality and presentation format. The technical complexity of the judicial analytics system required careful explanation to ensure that court administrators could understand both its capabilities and its limitations, without getting lost in programming details that weren't relevant to their operational needs. The demonstration preparation also provided opportunity to reflect on how far I'd come since the original arrest and trial that Bob continued to worry about. The software we'd developed represented exactly the kind of meaningful work I'd dreamed about during college, using advanced technology to solve real-world problems that affected access to justice for millions of Americans. The recognition we were receiving from federal court administrators validated not just my technical skills, but my understanding of legal processes that had been hard-won through personal experience. Sunday evening brought a family dinner at Bob and Linda's house in Cedar Park that felt like navigating a diplomatic minefield. Sarah had apparently prepared everyone for a discussion about communication boundaries and mutual expectations, but the conversation was stilted and uncomfortable in ways that highlighted how little my family understood about my professional environment or the implications of their interventions. Bob's explanation of his call to Patricia was delivered with the kind of defensive justification that suggested he still believed his actions had been appropriate, despite the complications they'd created. His concern about my potential vulnerability to employment problems was genuine, but it was based on fundamental misunderstandings about both my legal status and my professional relationships that seemed resistant to correction through rational explanation. Linda's attempts to mediate between Bob's protective instincts and my need for professional autonomy were well-intentioned but ineffective, since she shared many of his assumptions about my continued vulnerability and his responsibility to intervene when he perceived potential problems. Her suggestion that I should be grateful for his concern missed the point that good intentions didn't justify actions that could damage my career or undermine my credibility with colleagues. The family meeting concluded with promises to improve communication and respect boundaries that felt more like diplomatic solutions than genuine understanding of the underlying issues. Bob agreed to avoid future contact with my employer without prior consultation, but his body language suggested compliance rather than conviction about the appropriateness of such restrictions. The drive back to my apartment in the Domain after the family dinner provided time to process the contrast between my professional success and my continued struggles with family dynamics that seemed frozen in patterns established during my teenage years. The upcoming demonstration represented validation of everything I'd worked toward since college, while the family meeting represented the persistence of relationships that required careful management rather than natural enjoyment. Monday morning arrived with the kind of nervous energy that accompanies high-stakes professional presentations, amplified by lingering anxiety about how recent administrative discussions might affect my standing within the company. The Judicial Analytics Platform demonstration was scheduled for 2 o'clock, with court administrators from 3 federal districts attending, along with representatives from the Department of Justice, who were evaluating potential system-wide implementation. The morning preparation session with Kevin and Patricia went smoothly, with final technical checks confirming that all systems were functioning properly and presentation materials were polished and professional. Patricia's demeanor was completely normal, giving no indication that Bob's phone call had created any lasting concerns about my employment or professional relationships. The demonstration itself exceeded all expectations, with court administrators expressing genuine enthusiasm for the platform's capabilities and immediate interest in pilot program implementation. The artificial intelligence algorithms we'd developed for case pattern analysis and outcome prediction generated particularly strong responses, with several attendees commenting on the potential for significant improvements in judicial efficiency and resource allocation. My presentation of the technical architecture and security protocols was well received, with questions that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of both the system's capabilities and its limitations. The federal judges in attendance were particularly interested in privacy protections and data integrity measures, reflecting concerns that my own experience with digital evidence had helped me anticipate and address. The success of the demonstration felt like vindication of everything I'd built over the past 8 months at TechFlow, confirming that my technical skills and legal insights were creating value that justified Patricia's confidence in my abilities. The enthusiasm from potential clients suggested that the Judicial Analytics Platform could become a cornerstone product for the company, while also advancing my own career in legal technology. Patricia's comments during the post-demonstration debrief were overwhelmingly positive, emphasizing both the technical excellence of the platform and the professionalism of the presentation. Her praise felt particularly meaningful given the recent complications created by Bob's phone call, confirming that my professional standing within the company remained strong despite family interference. The administrative follow-up that concluded the week included confirmation from Michelle Rodriguez that all personnel matters related to recent family communications had been resolved satisfactorily, with no remaining concerns about my employment status or background qualifications. The bureaucratic closure felt anticlimactic after several days of anxiety, but it represented definitive resolution of issues that could have created lasting professional complications. Kevin's celebration of the successful demonstration and administrative resolution included his observation that the entire episode had ultimately strengthened rather than weakened my position within the company, since it had prompted explicit confirmation of my qualifications and value to the organization. His perspective helped reframe Bob's intervention as an inadvertent catalyst for professional validation, rather than a crisis that required damage control. The week that had begun with anxiety about family interference and employment complications concluded with recognition that my professional success was robust enough to withstand temporary disruptions from people who didn't understand my work environment or career trajectory. The Judicial Analytics Platform demonstration had generated new business opportunities that could advance both TechFlow's market position and my own prospects within the legal technology industry. The irony that my father's attempt to protect me from employment problems had actually led to explicit confirmation of my professional value wasn't lost on me, though I doubted that Bob would appreciate the humor in that outcome. His well-intentioned interference had created exactly the kind of workplace drama he'd been trying to prevent, while simultaneously demonstrating that my career was sufficiently established to survive family complications. The distance between my professional identity and my family relationships had been highlighted rather than bridged by recent events, confirming that my strategy of maintaining careful boundaries between those aspects of my life remained necessary for preserving both my career advancement and my family connections. The success I'd achieved at TechFlow represented validation of choices that my family still didn't fully understand, but it also provided security that made their lack of understanding manageable rather than threatening. Looking ahead to continued work on the Judicial Analytics Platform and new projects that would emerge from the successful demonstration, I felt confident that my career trajectory remained positive despite temporary complications created by family dynamics. The recognition from federal court administrators and Department of Justice representatives suggested opportunities for professional growth that would continue advancing my expertise in legal technology while contributing to meaningful improvements in judicial system effectiveness. The weekend following the demonstration brought time to reflect on how completely my life had stabilized compared to the uncertainty and vulnerability I'd experienced during high school and college. The professional success, financial security, and personal relationships I'd built created resilience that allowed me to navigate family complications without feeling threatened or defensive about my choices. Amanda's perspective on the week's events was particularly helpful, since her legal background allowed her to appreciate both the professional significance of the successful demonstration and the family dynamics that had created temporary anxiety. Her support during the uncertain period had been both emotionally stabilizing and strategically valuable, providing the kind of partnership that enhanced rather than complicated my ability to manage competing demands on my time and energy. The Judicial Analytics Platform's reception by federal court administrators had exceeded even Patricia's optimistic projections, creating momentum for expanded development that would require additional team members and increased technical resources. The opportunity to lead that expansion represented exactly the kind of career advancement I'd been working towards since joining TechFlow, combining increased responsibility with continued focus on meaningful social impact. The success of the demonstration also validated the decision I'd made to specialize in legal technology despite family skepticism about the practical value of such expertise. The intersection of computer science and legal processes that had once seemed like an esoteric academic interest was proving to be a growing market with significant opportunities for professionals who understood both technical and regulatory requirements. My relationship with Patricia continued to evolve in positive directions, with her recognition of my contributions to the platform creating opportunities for increased autonomy and project leadership. Her management style combined high expectations with genuine support for employee development, creating exactly the kind of professional environment where my skills could continue developing while contributing to organizationally meaningful outcomes. The resolution of administrative concerns related to Bob's phone call had eliminated the last potential obstacles to my continued advancement within TechFlow, confirming that my professional reputation was sufficiently established to withstand temporary complications from external sources. The explicit validation of my qualifications and background had actually strengthened my position by prompting formal documentation of my value to the organization. Looking back on the 10 years since my wrongful arrest and subsequent vindication, I could see how each challenge and setback had contributed to building the resilience and expertise that now characterized my professional life. The family dynamics that continued to require careful management were manageable precisely because my career success provided independence that hadn't existed during my more vulnerable teenage and college years. The upcoming week would bring new projects and opportunities that built on the foundation established by the successful judicial analytics platform demonstration, while also requiring continued attention to family relationships that remained important despite their complications. The balance between professional advancement and personal connections that I'd been developing over the past several years felt sustainable and rewarding in ways that validated every difficult choice I'd made about prioritizing long-term goals over short-term comfort. The Monday following our successful judicial analytics demonstration brought an unexpected invitation that would fundamentally alter my understanding of both my professional trajectory and my relationship with Patricia Williams. Her assistant called at 8:30 that morning requesting my presence in Patricia's office for what she described as a strategic planning discussion about expanded development opportunities and long-term project leadership roles within the company. Walking into Patricia's corner office that morning, I was struck by details I'd never noticed during previous meetings. The wall behind her desk displayed her judicial commissions, law school diplomas, and professional recognitions that documented a career spanning prosecution, private practice, and federal judicial service. Among these credentials was a framed photograph showing her swearing-in ceremony as a federal judge, with Chief Justice Roberts administering the oath while her family looked on with obvious pride. Patricia's greeting was warmer than usual, suggesting that our conversation would extend beyond routine project management and venture into territory that required more personal disclosure than our typical professional interactions demanded. Her opening comment about the success of the previous week's demonstration quickly evolved into broader discussion about my career goals, technical expertise, and long-term aspirations within the legal technology industry. The conversation that followed would prove to be the most significant professional discussion of my career, not because of the opportunities it presented, but because of the revelations it contained about connections I'd never suspected, and ironies that seemed almost impossible to believe. Patricia's questions about my background and experience were more detailed than usual, probing into aspects of my education and early career that seemed tangentially related to current project discussions. When she asked about my motivation for specializing in cybersecurity and digital forensics, her tone suggested genuine curiosity rather than routine professional interest. My explanation of how wrongful prosecution had shaped my understanding of digital evidence and procedural justice seemed to resonate with her in ways that went beyond typical employer appreciation for employee qualifications and dedication. Patricia's response to my description of the high school arrest and subsequent vindication was immediate recognition rather than surprised discovery, confirming what I'd begun to suspect but hadn't dared to assume. Her knowledge of specific details about the case, including technical aspects of the forensic analysis and legal procedures that had led to dismissal of all charges, could only have come from direct involvement in the judicial proceedings. The revelation that Patricia Williams, my current supervisor, and the person responsible for my professional advancement at TechFlow, was the same Judge Williams who had dismissed all charges against me 10 years earlier, created a moment of cognitive dissonance that required several minutes to fully process. The federal judge who had vindicated me after months of wrongful prosecution had become the corporate executive who was now validating my professional expertise and offering expanded leadership opportunities. Patricia's explanation of her transition from federal judicial service to corporate leadership in legal technology was fascinating both personally and professionally, representing exactly the kind of career evolution that demonstrated how expertise in legal processes could translate into innovation in legal technology development. Her decision to leave the bench after 15 years had been motivated by opportunities to improve judicial system effectiveness through technology rather than individual case adjudication. The irony of our professional relationship was overwhelming in its implications and satisfying in its symmetry. The wrongful prosecution that had seemed like the worst possible outcome during my senior year of high school had actually provided me with insights and expertise that made me valuable to the very person who had ensured that prosecution didn't destroy my future. My experience as a victim of digital evidence misinterpretation had qualified me to develop systems that prevented similar injustices. Patricia's perspective on our shared history was both professionally astute and personally generous, emphasizing how my technical knowledge and ethical approach to legal technology development reflected lessons learned through personal experience with prosecutorial overreach and procedural mistakes. Her recognition that my wrongful prosecution had created unique qualifications rather than permanent liability was validating in ways that transcended typical workplace affirmation. The discussion of expanded responsibilities and leadership opportunities that followed took on additional significance given the context of our shared legal history. Patricia's confidence in my ability to manage larger teams and more complex projects wasn't just based on my recent performance at TechFlow, but also on her decade-old observation of my character under extreme pressure and my commitment to ethical principles despite personal cost. Her offer to promote me to Director of Legal Technology Development represented recognition that went far beyond typical career advancement, encompassing both professional achievement and personal vindication that seemed almost too perfect to be coincidental. The position would involve oversight of multiple development teams, strategic planning for new product lines, and direct interaction with federal court administrators and Department of Justice officials who were evaluating TechFlow's technologies for system-wide implementation. The responsibilities associated with the new position would require security clearances and background investigations that exceeded even TechFlow's current standards, involving federal agencies that maintained comprehensive records of legal proceedings and criminal justice interactions. Patricia's confidence that these investigations would validate, rather than complicate my qualifications, suggested that she understood both the thoroughness of my vindication and the value that my experience brought to legal technology development. The salary and benefits package that accompanied the promotion offer was generous enough to represent financial security that would have seemed impossible during my struggling college years or uncertain early career period. More importantly, the position offered opportunities to influence policy and development priorities that could improve legal system effectiveness for millions of Americans, while advancing my own expertise in areas where technology and justice intersected. My acceptance of the promotion was immediate and enthusiastic, representing validation of every difficult choice I'd made about prioritizing long-term goals over short-term comfort and family expectations. The wrongful arrest that Bob continued to worry about had actually become the foundation for professional recognition that exceeded anything I'd imagined possible during those dark months of legal uncertainty. Patricia's explanation of why she'd never mentioned our shared legal history during my 8 months at TechFlow was both professionally appropriate and personally thoughtful, ensuring that my success within the company was based on merit rather than judicial sympathy or obligation. Her decision to evaluate my work objectively without being influenced by knowledge of my personal history had created exactly the kind of authentic professional relationship that could support long-term collaboration and mutual respect. The conversation concluded with Patricia's observation that our professional relationship represented the best possible outcome of the legal system working correctly, transforming individual injustice into collective benefit through technology that could prevent similar problems for future defendants. Her perspective reframed my wrongful prosecution as a contribution to justice, rather than a personal trauma that required ongoing management. The remainder of that week was spent in transition planning and strategic discussions about staffing, project priorities, and resource allocation for expanded legal technology development under my leadership. The judicial analytics platform that had validated my technical expertise would become the foundation for a comprehensive suite of legal software products that could revolutionize court administration and prosecutorial efficiency. Kevin's promotion to senior systems architect as part of my expanded team felt like appropriate recognition of both his technical contributions and his personal loyalty during difficult periods of my career. His forensic analysis that had cleared me in high school had been the beginning of a friendship that now included professional collaboration on projects that could improve legal system effectiveness for countless Americans. The announcement of my promotion within TechFlow generated congratulations from colleagues who recognized both my technical qualifications and my commitment to developing technology that served broader social purposes rather than purely commercial objectives. The recognition felt particularly meaningful because it was based on demonstrated competence rather than sympathy or special consideration for past difficulties. James Foster's comments about my promotion emphasized both the technical innovation and ethical leadership that the position would require, confirming that TechFlow's commitment to social impact aligned with my own professional values and career aspirations. His confidence in my ability to manage complex projects while maintaining the company's reputation for integrity and innovation was gratifying validation of everything I'd worked to achieve. The expanded responsibilities associated with my new position included oversight of relationships with federal agencies, state court systems, and legal professional organizations that were evaluating TechFlow's technologies for large-scale implementation. These interactions would require communication skills and strategic thinking that went beyond technical expertise, encompassing policy analysis and stakeholder management that could influence the future direction of legal technology adoption. The security clearance process that accompanied my promotion was more comprehensive than any background investigation I'd previously experienced, involving interviews with references, employers, neighbors, and family members who could provide insights into my character, reliability, and commitment to ethical principles. The irony that my family's continued concerns about my legal history were being investigated by federal agents who would confirm my complete vindication was not lost on me. Bob's reaction to the federal background investigation was exactly the anxiety and confusion I'd expected, compounded by his inability to understand why my promotion would require such extensive scrutiny if there weren't underlying concerns about my qualifications or trustworthiness. His phone call seeking explanation for why investigators were asking detailed questions about my arrest and trial revealed how little he understood about security clearance procedures or the thoroughness of federal background checks. My explanation that the investigation was routine rather than concerning seemed to provide limited reassurance to Bob, whose insurance industry background had taught him to view government scrutiny as evidence of potential problems rather than standard procedure for positions involving sensitive information. His continued worry that the investigation might uncover issues that could jeopardize my employment reflected persistent misunderstanding of both my legal status and my professional qualifications. Linda's perspective on the background investigation was more positive, reflecting her elementary education experience with background checks and her growing confidence in my career trajectory. Her questions about my new responsibilities and their social impact suggested genuine interest in understanding my work rather than continued anxiety about its implications for family reputation or stability. Sarah's reaction to news of my promotion was unqualified enthusiasm that seemed to represent genuine pride rather than obligatory family support. Her marketing background had given her insights into corporate advancement that allowed her to appreciate both the professional recognition and the career opportunities that the position represented. Her suggestion that we celebrate the promotion with a family dinner felt like authentic desire to acknowledge my success rather than diplomatic obligation. The family dinner that took place the following weekend was markedly different from previous gatherings, characterized by genuine curiosity about my new responsibilities, rather than polite disinterest or subtle criticism of my career choices. Bob's questions about federal security clearances and government contracts suggested growing appreciation for the legitimacy and importance of my work, even if he didn't fully understand its technical complexity. Linda's pride in my promotion was evident in her descriptions to neighbors and friends, representing a significant shift from previous ambivalence about my career choices to active celebration of my professional achievements. Her understanding of my work remained limited, but her confidence in my success had clearly evolved from cautious hope to genuine conviction. The conversation about my shared history with Patricia Williams was carefully managed to protect her privacy, while explaining the remarkable coincidence of our professional relationship. Bob's reaction to learning that my boss was the judge who had cleared me was a mixture of amazement and relief, finally providing him with concrete evidence that my legal vindication had been complete and authoritative. Patricia's background as a federal judge added credibility to my career choices that Bob could understand and appreciate in ways that purely technical achievements had never provided. His insurance industry respect for judicial authority and legal expertise created immediate confidence in Patricia's leadership and recognition of the honor associated with working under her supervision. The family's understanding of my career trajectory was fundamentally altered by revelation of Patricia's judicial background and our shared legal history, transforming their perception of my work from mysterious technical activity to meaningful contribution to legal system improvement. The wrongful prosecution that had once seemed like family embarrassment was now understood as providing unique qualifications for important professional responsibilities. The months that followed my promotion were filled with challenging projects and expanding responsibilities that validated Patricia's confidence in my leadership abilities, while providing opportunities to influence legal technology development at national level. The judicial analytics platform had generated sufficient interest from federal agencies to warrant expanded development and customization for different court systems and jurisdictional requirements. My management of development teams working on multiple legal technology projects required skills that extended far beyond programming expertise, encompassing project planning, resource allocation, stakeholder communication, and strategic planning that could determine TechFlow's competitive position in rapidly growing markets. The responsibility was both intimidating and exhilarating, representing exactly the kind of meaningful work I'd aspired to during college and early career uncertainty. The recognition I received from legal technology conferences and professional organizations confirmed that my expertise in cybersecurity and digital forensics was creating value that extended beyond TechFlow's immediate business interests. Speaking engagements and consulting opportunities that emerged from this recognition enhanced both my professional reputation and the company's market position in legal technology development. The financial security that accompanied my promotion enabled lifestyle choices and long-term planning that would have seemed impossible during my struggling college years or family conflicts about career direction. The apartment upgrade, investment planning, and travel opportunities that success provided were gratifying validation of every difficult decision I'd made about prioritizing education and skill development over immediate comfort. My relationship with Amanda continued developing into genuine partnership based on mutual respect and shared professional interests, rather than casual attraction or desperate attachment. Her understanding of legal processes complemented my technical expertise in ways that enhanced both of our career developments, while providing personal satisfaction that transcended professional achievement. The social circle that formed around our combined professional networks created exactly the kind of intellectual stimulation and career advancement opportunities that had been missing from my Cedar Park family environment. These relationships were based on shared values and mutual interests rather than obligation or proximity, generating genuine friendships that enhanced both personal fulfillment and professional development. 2 years after my promotion to Director of Legal Technology Development, TechFlow received a federal contract to develop comprehensive case management systems for the entire federal court system, representing validation of both our technical capabilities and our commitment to improving judicial efficiency. The project would require coordination with hundreds of federal judges, thousands of court personnel, and multiple government agencies responsible for legal system administration. My role as project director for the federal contract represented culmination of everything I'd worked toward since college graduation, combining technical leadership with social impact at a scale that could improve access to justice for millions of Americans. The responsibility was enormous, but it was also exactly the kind of meaningful work that had motivated my career choices despite family skepticism and personal setbacks. The irony that my wrongful prosecution had provided qualifications for developing systems that could prevent similar injustices was not lost on anyone involved in the project planning. Patricia's observation that my personal experience with prosecutorial overreach had created unique insights into system vulnerabilities and procedural protections was acknowledged by federal officials who were designing implementation protocols. The team that I assembled for the federal project included Kevin as lead systems architect, along with legal technology specialists, cybersecurity experts, and user interface designers who could create software that served both technical requirements and practical needs of legal professionals working under pressure with limited resources. The collaborative approach to development ensured that our solutions would be both innovative and implementable. Bob's understanding of my career had evolved dramatically during the 2 years since my promotion, progressing from confusion and concern to genuine pride and active interest in my professional achievements. His questions about federal contracts and government recognition reflected growing appreciation for both the legitimacy and importance of my work in ways that had never characterized his previous attitudes toward my career choices. Linda's descriptions of my work to her teaching colleagues and community friends had become a source of obvious satisfaction, representing complete transformation from previous embarrassment about my unconventional career path to active celebration of my professional success. Her confidence in my choices had clearly evolved from reluctant acceptance to enthusiastic support. Sarah's marketing expertise had proven valuable for understanding the business implications of federal contracts and the career opportunities that such recognition could create for long-term professional development. Her suggestions about public relations and professional networking reflected genuine investment in my success rather than obligatory family support. The family dynamics that had once been characterized by fundamental misunderstanding and subtle disapproval had transformed into relationships based on mutual respect and genuine interest in each other's achievements. The distance that had once felt like rejection now felt like healthy independence that enhanced rather than threatened family connections. The federal contract announcement generated national media attention that highlighted both TechFlow's technical capabilities and my personal story of overcoming wrongful prosecution to become a leader in legal technology development. The interviews and profile articles that resulted from this coverage provided opportunities to discuss both technical innovation and criminal justice reform in ways that connected my personal experience to broader social issues. Patricia's perspective on the media attention was characteristically thoughtful, emphasizing the importance of using public platforms to advance understanding of both technology potential and legal system reform, rather than simply promoting commercial interests. Her guidance helped me navigate media opportunities in ways that enhanced both personal and organizational reputation while contributing to meaningful public discourse. The speaking engagements that followed media coverage included legal conferences, technology symposiums, and criminal justice reform events, where my story illustrated both the potential for prosecutorial error and the possibility of transforming personal setbacks into professional contributions. These presentations connected my technical expertise to broader advocacy for legal system improvement. The recognition I received from criminal justice reform organizations was particularly meaningful, since it validated my belief that technology could contribute to preventing the kind of prosecutorial mistakes that had nearly destroyed my future. The awards and acknowledgments from these groups confirmed that my work was creating value beyond commercial success or personal achievement. 5 years after Bob's phone call that had seemed like family interference threatening my professional stability, I was invited to testify before a congressional subcommittee investigating prosecutorial misconduct and the use of digital evidence in criminal proceedings. The invitation represented recognition of my expertise in both technology development and personal experience with prosecutorial overreach. The testimony I provided to Congress drew connections between my wrongful prosecution and the systematic reforms needed to prevent similar injustices, using technical knowledge gained through professional experience to propose specific improvements in how digital evidence is collected, analyzed, and presented in criminal proceedings. The recommendations I offered were both technically sophisticated and practically implementable. The congressional testimony generated additional media coverage that established me as a thought leader in the intersection of technology and criminal justice reform, creating opportunities for continued advocacy while advancing my professional reputation in legal technology development. The recognition felt like complete vindication of every choice I'd made about career direction and professional priorities. Bob's reaction to watching my congressional testimony was emotional in ways that surprised both of us, representing his first complete understanding of how my wrongful prosecution had shaped both my professional expertise and my commitment to preventing similar injustices. His pride in my achievements was unqualified and enthusiastic, reflecting fundamental transformation in his understanding of my career choices and their social significance. The family celebration that followed my congressional testimony felt like genuine recognition of shared accomplishment, rather than diplomatic acknowledgement of individual success. The distance between my professional achievements and my family's understanding had finally been bridged through recognition that my work contributed to values they could appreciate and support. Looking back on the decade since Patricia Williams had first dismissed charges against me, I could see how every challenge and setback had contributed to building both the technical expertise and personal resilience that now characterized my professional life. The wrongful prosecution that had seemed like catastrophic injustice had actually provided unique qualifications for meaningful work that served broader social purposes. The relationship with Patricia that had begun with judicial vindication and evolved through professional mentorship represented exactly the kind of meaningful connection that transcended typical workplace dynamics. Her guidance had been instrumental in developing both my technical capabilities and my understanding of how technology could serve justice rather than simply generating profit. The success I'd achieved at TechFlow and beyond was satisfying not just because of financial rewards or professional recognition, but because it represented validation of values and choices that had often seemed difficult to maintain during periods of family pressure and social expectations. The career I'd built served purposes that extended beyond personal advancement to include social contribution and meaningful impact. The family relationships that had once been characterized by misunderstanding and disappointment had evolved into connections based on mutual respect and genuine appreciation for different approaches to success and fulfillment. The independence I'd fought to maintain had ultimately enhanced rather than threatened family bonds. The phone call from Bob, that had once seemed like interference threatening my professional stability, had actually prompted explicit confirmation of my qualifications and value, while creating opportunities to explain my work in ways that enhanced family understanding and support. His well-intentioned concern had inadvertently strengthened, rather than undermined my career trajectory. Patricia Williams, the federal judge who had cleared my name 10 years earlier, had become not just my professional supervisor, but my mentor in developing technology that could prevent the kind of prosecutorial mistakes that had once threatened to destroy my future. The irony of our relationship was matched only by its productivity in creating meaningful social impact through innovative legal technology. The distance between my teenage experience as a wrongfully accused defendant and my adult role as a leader in legal technology development represented transformation that validated every difficult choice about prioritizing long-term goals over short-term comfort. The arrest that had seemed like ending had actually been beginning of expertise that now served justice at national level. Bob's attempt to protect me from employment complications had created exactly the kind of workplace validation he'd been trying to ensure, while simultaneously revealing family dynamics that needed to be addressed for healthy long-term relationships. His protective instinct had been genuine, but its expression had required education about professional boundaries and communication protocols. The judicial analytics platform, that had begun as a challenging technical project, had evolved into comprehensive legal technology solutions that were improving court efficiency and prosecutorial accuracy across multiple jurisdictions. The work represented exactly the kind of meaningful contribution that had motivated my career choices, despite family skepticism and personal setbacks. The recognition I'd received from legal professionals, technology experts, and criminal justice advocates confirmed that my expertise was creating value that extended far beyond personal achievement, to include social contribution and systematic improvement. The awards and acknowledgments validated both technical capabilities and ethical commitment to using technology in service of justice. The Tuesday morning that Bob Thompson decided to make the phone call that would change everything started with him staring at a newspaper article about corporate executives being fired after hidden criminal backgrounds were discovered. The article had triggered weeks of growing anxiety about his son Marcus's employment at TechFlow Solutions, combining with his insurance agent's instinctive worry about undisclosed liabilities and potential legal complications that could affect both employees and employers. Bob had been wrestling with conflicting emotions about Marcus's career success for months. Pride in his son's achievements, warring with persistent concern about the arrest and trial that had dominated their family life 10 years earlier. Despite the eventual dismissal of all charges and Marcus's subsequent vindication, Bob had never fully shaken the worry that his son's legal history could resurface to create problems that might be prevented through proper disclosure and communication. The decision to contact Patricia Williams directly came from Bob's growing conviction that Marcus might not have been completely transparent about his criminal background during the hiring process at TechFlow. His insurance industry experience had taught him that undisclosed legal issues could create significant liability problems for employers, potentially exposing companies to regulatory sanctions or lawsuits if they unknowingly employed individuals with criminal records that hadn't been properly vetted. Bob's understanding of Marcus's work remained limited to general knowledge that he developed software for legal professionals, but his understanding of employment law included clear awareness that criminal background disclosure was a standard requirement for positions involving sensitive information or security clearances. His worry that Marcus might be jeopardizing both his own career and his employer's reputation through incomplete honesty had been building for weeks. The phone call itself was carefully planned and diplomatically worded, with Bob introducing himself as Marcus Thompson's father and requesting a private conversation with Patricia Williams about concerns related to his son's employment. His explanation was measured and respectful, expressing worry that Marcus might not have been completely forthcoming about his legal history, and suggesting that the company might want to conduct additional background investigation to protect against potential future complications. Bob's motivation was genuinely protective, stemming from his belief that proactive disclosure would be better than reactive damage control if Marcus's arrest record was ever discovered through other channels. His insurance background had taught him that hidden problems always eventually surfaced, usually at the worst possible times and in the most damaging ways possible. His call to Patricia was intended to prevent such problems rather than create them. Patricia Williams received Bob's call in her corner office at TechFlow Solutions, surrounded by the judicial commissions and legal credentials that documented her career progression from federal prosecutor to federal judge to corporate executive specializing in legal technology development. Her initial reaction to Bob's introduction was polite professional attention, assuming the call involved routine family communication or perhaps questions about Marcus's work schedule or responsibilities. Bob's explanation of his concerns about Marcus's criminal background and employment disclosure immediately captured Patricia's complete attention, not because she was unaware of Marcus's legal history, but because she knew far more about that history than Bob could possibly have imagined. Her role as the federal judge who had personally dismissed all charges against Marcus 10 years earlier gave her comprehensive understanding of both the technical evidence and the legal proceedings that had completely vindicated him. Patricia's response to Bob's concerns was professionally measured and diplomatically appropriate, thanking him for his call while assuring him that TechFlow's hiring procedures included comprehensive background checks that exceeded industry standards for positions involving sensitive data and security clearances. Her explanation that the company was fully aware of Marcus's qualifications and background was carefully worded to provide reassurance without revealing the extent of her personal knowledge about his legal case. The irony of Bob's call was immediately apparent to Patricia, who understood that the father was attempting to protect his son from employment complications related to legal history that she, as the presiding judge, knew had been completely resolved through proper judicial procedures. Her amusement at the situation was tempered by recognition that family dynamics were apparently more complicated than she had realized, suggesting that Marcus's relationship with his family included ongoing anxiety about issues that had been definitively settled years earlier. Patricia's decision not to reveal her judicial involvement in Marcus's case during the phone call was based on professional discretion and respect for Marcus's privacy, allowing him to control disclosure of personal information rather than having his supervisor discuss his legal history with family members without his knowledge or consent. Her handling of Bob's call was designed to provide appropriate reassurance while maintaining proper boundaries between personal and professional relationships. The conversation concluded with Patricia's confirmation that Marcus's employment status was secure, and that his background had been thoroughly vetted through standard company procedures. Bob's relief at this assurance was genuine, though he remained unaware of the full context that made Patricia's confidence so well-founded. His protective instinct had been satisfied through official confirmation that his concerns had been unnecessary. Patricia's reflection on Bob's call after hanging up included recognition that Marcus's family relationships involved ongoing complications related to his teenage legal troubles, suggesting that his professional success might not have fully resolved personal dynamics that continued to affect family interactions. Her understanding of Marcus's character and capabilities had been shaped by observing his work performance rather than his family relationships, creating awareness that there might be additional complexities in his personal life. The decision about whether and how to discuss Bob's call with Marcus required careful consideration of both professional appropriateness and personal sensitivity. Patricia's experience as a federal judge had taught her the importance of allowing individuals to control disclosure of their own legal history, while her role as Marcus's supervisor required addressing any concerns that might affect his work performance or professional relationships. Marcus's arrival at work Tuesday morning was characterized by his usual focus on technical challenges and project deadlines, with no awareness that his father had contacted his employer or that his carefully maintained separation between family dynamics and professional relationships was about to be disrupted. His concentration on debugging complex algorithms and preparing for upcoming demonstrations reflected the kind of professional engagement that had earned Patricia's respect and confidence. The morning routine that Marcus had established during his 8 months at TechFlow involved reviewing overnight system logs, checking development server status, and prioritizing daily programming tasks based on project milestones and team dependencies. His systematic approach to technical challenges and attention to detail had made him invaluable to the judicial analytics platform development, earning recognition from colleagues and supervisors who appreciated both his expertise and his work ethic. Kevin Chen's arrival at the office brought the usual collaborative energy that characterized their partnership on challenging projects, with discussions about user interface improvements and database optimization that reflected their complementary technical skills. Their friendship, built on shared experience from high school and reinforced through professional collaboration, provided exactly the kind of workplace relationship that enhanced both productivity and job satisfaction. The judicial analytics platform that Marcus and Kevin were developing represented cutting-edge innovation in legal technology, combining artificial intelligence algorithms with comprehensive legal databases to create tools that could revolutionize court administration and case management. The technical complexity of the project required expertise in multiple programming languages, database architecture, and user interface design that challenged both of them while contributing to meaningful social impact. Patricia's decision to address Bob's phone call during Marcus's regular 11 o'clock check-in meeting was based on her assessment that direct communication would be more appropriate than allowing potential misunderstandings to develop through delayed disclosure or incomplete information. Her approach to the conversation was designed to provide necessary context while respecting both Marcus's privacy and his family relationships. Marcus's initial reaction to learning about Bob's call was confusion rather than alarm, since his father had never shown sufficient interest in his work to contact his employer directly. The realization that Bob had called to discuss his criminal background created immediate anxiety about how such disclosure might affect his professional relationships and career prospects, despite his knowledge that his legal vindication had been complete and well documented. The irony of Bob's protective intervention was immediately apparent to Marcus, who understood that his father's attempt to prevent employment problems had actually created exactly the kind of workplace complication he had been trying to avoid. The carefully maintained boundary between his family relationships and professional identity had been breached in ways that could potentially affect his standing within the company and his relationships with colleagues. Patricia's handling of Marcus's anxiety about Bob's call demonstrated the kind of leadership and emotional intelligence that had made her successful in both judicial and corporate environments. Her reassurance that the call had not created any concerns about his employment status was accompanied by recognition that family dynamics could be challenging for employees who were trying to maintain professional autonomy while preserving personal relationships. The conversation that followed between Marcus and Patricia was the most personally revealing discussion they had ever had, moving beyond routine project management and professional development to address family relationships and personal history that had shaped Marcus's character and career choices. Patricia's questions about his family's understanding of his work and their reaction to his legal vindication provided insights into challenges that she hadn't previously considered. Marcus's explanation of his family's continued anxiety about his teenage arrest and their lack of understanding about his professional achievements revealed the kind of ongoing personal challenges that many successful professionals faced when their career trajectories diverged significantly from family expectations and experiences. His description of careful boundary management and limited communication about work details highlighted strategies he had developed for preserving both family relationships and professional autonomy. Patricia's response to learning about Marcus's family dynamics was both personally sympathetic and professionally strategic, recognizing that employee success often required support for managing complex personal relationships that could affect work performance and career development. Her offer to provide additional context or reassurance to family members who might have concerns about his employment reflected understanding of how family anxiety could create unnecessary stress for employees. The revelation that Patricia Williams was the federal judge who had dismissed all charges against Marcus 10 years earlier emerged naturally from their conversation about family concerns and legal history, creating a moment of recognition that transformed their professional relationship into something far more significant and personally meaningful. The coincidence seemed almost impossible, but the specific details that Patricia knew about his case confirmed the connection beyond any doubt. Marcus's reaction to discovering that his boss was the judge who had vindicated him was emotional overwhelm that required several minutes to process fully. The federal judge who had saved his future had become the corporate executive who was now advancing his career, creating symmetry that seemed too perfect to be coincidental but too detailed to be fabricated. Patricia's explanation of her transition from federal judicial service to legal technology development provided context for understanding how their paths had converged in ways that served both personal vindication and professional advancement. Her decision to leave the bench after 15 years had been motivated by opportunities to improve legal system effectiveness through innovation rather than individual case adjudication. The discussion of their shared history and its implications for their current working relationship was both professionally appropriate and personally satisfying, allowing both of them to acknowledge connections that had been implicit in their interactions without compromising the merit-based foundation of Marcus's success at TechFlow. Patricia's confirmation that his achievements had been earned through competence rather than judicial sympathy provided validation that enhanced rather than diminished his professional confidence. The irony that Bob's protective phone call had led to revelation of the most supportive possible professional relationship was not lost on either Marcus or Patricia, though they agreed that such information should remain confidential to protect both personal privacy and professional boundaries. The family dynamics that had prompted Bob's intervention were complex enough without adding the additional complication of judicial connections. The conversation concluded with mutual recognition that their shared legal history had created unique opportunities for meaningful collaboration on projects that could prevent the kind of prosecutorial mistakes that had once threatened Marcus's future. Their professional relationship would continue to be based on merit and performance, but it would also be informed by shared understanding of how technology could serve justice and protect individual rights. The remainder of Tuesday was spent in reflective consideration of how completely circumstances had aligned to transform apparent crisis into unexpected opportunity, with Bob's protective intervention leading to discovery of professional relationships that validated every choice Marcus had made about career direction and personal resilience. The wrongful arrest that continued to worry his family had actually provided qualifications that made him valuable to the very person who had ensured that arrest didn't destroy his future. The phone call from Bob, that had seemed like family interference threatening professional stability, had actually prompted explicit confirmation of the most supportive possible working relationship, while simultaneously creating opportunities to address family concerns through authoritative reassurance about employment security and career prospects. The protective instinct that had motivated Bob's call had achieved exactly what he had hoped, just not in the way he had expected. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.